Raider Nation, what's going on? You're watching the Raiders Report, brought to you by BetDSI, and I'm your host, Mitchell Renz. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, at MitchellRenz365. Today I got the top 5 running backs the Raiders should target in 2019, and it's a good list, and there's a lot of running back rumors going to be going on around the Raiders this offseason because, well, we don't necessarily know who's going to be the starting running back for the Raiders in 2019. Marshawn Lynch, I've given it 3 Chucky heads. I think you can almost give it 4 Chucky heads that I think he's going to retire in 2019, and he's had a pretty good year, but he's gone down with some injuries, and I just think at this point in his career, I don't know if he necessarily wants to be a part of a rebuild, and if they're not going to play in Oakland, where he originally wanted to play for the Raiders, I just don't see him coming back. And then Doug Martin and Jalen Richard, they're expected to be free agents, and, well, they're going to be free agents, and I don't know if they're going to bring back Martin. I wouldn't mind Richard. Richard was at least decent out of the backfield, being able to be a reliable, we'll say, safety blanket once in a while or check down guy for Derek Carr. But the name that I really like is Chris Warren, and I would love for them to give maybe a little bit more spark to Chris Warren to see what he could do, because I think we can all agree he was absolutely the man to watch in the preseason, and I would like to see them do that. And then also in terms of cap space, they have $73.4 million to spend, which is top 5 in the NFL. It's 5 right now as it stands, and they're going to go out. I think they're going to maybe look for a running back or two if they don't like any in the draft, and that's why ultimately I'm going to do this segment. But a really cool thing about the Raiders, again, plenty of money, plenty of things to get going, and I got my top 5 Raiders running back targets in 2019. But before I get into that, I got a little favor to ask. Please subscribe below to youtube.com/Raiders Report, where I put on a whole bunch of these shows. I do Raiders rumors, I do my Raider Nation rumors, and again, subscribe below, youtube.com/Raiders Report. The more subscribers I get, the more shows I can do, which means more Raiders content for you in the offseason. Let's have a good offseason, by the way. My top 5 running backs coming up now. Number 5 here is Tevin Coleman. And when you look at the makeup of the Atlanta Falcons backfield, it just doesn't make sense for them to keep Coleman. And even though he's a talented running back who can catch the ball, who can run the ball between the tackles, they have Devonta Freeman. And even though Devonta Freeman was banged up this past year, that's where their money's invested. So I don't really see them putting a lot of money into Tevin Coleman, who, you know, has a market value of about $5 million. And Coleman wants to be a starting running back. And I think that he should be. I think he's a talented running back when you watch when he's actually had the opportunity to get 15 to 20 touches. That's when he's been, really productive and pretty good. So ultimately, I would like for the Raiders to maybe target Coleman. Now, I understand he's only 5 on my list. I put him at number 5 based on talent. But in terms of talent, price, and all that, I like Tevin Coleman as one of my top options. And I think he would fit pretty well in the offense that the Raiders run. When you look back at 2018, I think it'd be interesting to see what this guy could do with an entire full workload. 167 carries, 800 yards, 4.8 yards per carry, 4 touchdowns. And also he is dynamic out of the backfield. And that Atlanta Falcons offense sure is good, but they also dealt with a ton of injuries. And then when you just look at what he's done for his entire career, he's split time for his entire career with the Falcons, much of it with Devonta Freeman. And I think you do anything, you got to get into a rhythm. And maybe sometimes coming off the field, he wasn't able to really fully get into that rhythm. And if he comes over to the Raiders, I would like to see him get, 250 to 300 touches in a year. But at 528 carries, 2,340 yards, 4.4 yards per carry, and the 18 touchdowns is something that we could potentially expect going forward, because 4.4 yards per carry and a tough NFC South, that's something that I'm looking forward to. So, question for you. Would you want the Raiders to sign Tevin Coleman? He's just one of the top free agent running backs this offseason, and as I stated before, I think he would be pretty productive if he was able to get a little bit more of the workload, and I think he would fit well in our offense. So, would you want the Raiders to sign Tevin Coleman? But remember, he is number only 5 on my list. Shout out to BetDSI for hooking up Chat Sports with the best promo code on the internet. Go to chatsports.com/bet. Use that promo code LIVE120 for 120% deposit bonus. I challenge you to find a better deposit bonus on the internet. Again, it's chatsports.com/bet. My number 4 running back that the Raiders should target in 2019 is Jay Ajayi. And he tore his ACL earlier this season, which is unfortunate for him, because I think when we've seen Jay Ajayi, it's been good and it's been bad, right? So when you look back at his 2016 season, he had 3 unbelievable games where he rushed for over 200 yards. And then his other 13, well, they were like, meh, right? They were okay. But I think you could look at that and say maybe that had a little bit to do more with the Miami Dolphins and the team he was on, but when he actually got to run behind a good offensive line with the Eagles, he looked pretty good. So before he went down with that injury, 45 carries, 184 yards, 4.1 yards per carry, and 3 touchdowns. So I look at Jay, and I say, okay, Jay, the last season was good, and then I'm going to stick ahead here and look at, maybe what you've done for your entire career, and I'm like, can I maybe get a little bit more out of you? So that I want that 4.5. I want the Jay Ajayi who's known to break off that big run here or there. That's the person that I want in my Raiders backfield. 562 carries, 2,516 yards, and 13 touchdowns. It's not a lot of work for a running back, especially at his age of 26. But the thing that we're always going to talk about with Jay Ajayi, the knee issues that made him fall down in the draft. When he was coming out at a Boise State, from a talent standpoint, he should have went much higher in the draft. But when you look at the knee issues, that's something that you're always going to talk about. And I think we can all agree, if this is a rebuild mode and we're going to invest money in someone, do I really want to invest money in Jay Ajayi, who, according to Spotrac, has a market value of $3.6 million? If he's a 1-year rental, maybe a 2-year rental, I like it. If we sign him to anything more than that, not going to be crazy about Jay Ajayi on the Raiders. So I talked about Tevin Coleman. I talked about Jay Ajayi. If both of these players were the top 2 options for the Raiders in 2019, who would you want? Who would you want? Type A for Ajayi or type C for Coleman. And I want you guys to DM me on Twitter or on Instagram. Give me your personal opinion. Heck, give me a personal opinion on both of these guys. But if you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on Facebook, just type below. A for Ajayi, C for Coleman. My number 3 running back is a little bit different than the other 2. The other 2 are going to be free agents in 2019. This guy isn't, and this is Leonard Fournette, and I like Leonard Fournette here at number 3, and the only reason why I say this is because this is, I think, the prime example of buy low. He's got a lot of crap going on right now with the Jags, and I think this is going to be a bad breakup that we're going to be talking about a lot this offseason. So the Jags voiding guaranteed money on his deal. So they're not trying to give this guy guaranteed money, which that ultimately is a red flag, and I can understand Leonard Fournette being upset, but then I can also understand the Jags being upset, right? I mean, there have been multiple reports about him showing up late to practice. There's been multiple reports about him not really wanting to participate in practice. Heck, there's been reports about Blake Bortles having to give him tips literally during the game on, hey, Leonard, this is what you're supposed to do on every single play. And I think the more Blake Bortles has less control over my offense, the better. And if he has to constantly tap Leonard Fournette on the shoulder and say, hey, guess what? You're supposed to do that. You're supposed to line up there. That's difficult. This is what I'll say. I think if Leonard Fournette, from a talent standpoint, is a talented running back, if he steps on in and for the Raiders, and if he gets under John Gruden, I think if there's one coach who could maybe strangle Leonard Fournette a little bit and get him straightened, it's John Gruden and Mike Mayock. So from a talent standpoint, give me a great Leonard Fournette. The only issue is, if I get 2018 Leonard Fournette, I don't want him. I watched Leonard Fournette this past year, and it did not have the desire that he ran with earlier in 2017. But 133 carries, 439 yards, 3.3 yards per carry, and 5 touchdowns. Now, I could put a lot of, I'll say, impact, or I'll say maybe the reason why he struggled so much, because the offense was bad. Blake Bortles was bad. Cody Kessler was bad. They got rid of some of their bigger pieces, maybe like an Allen Robinson this year. So that could be a lot to do with it. And he was facing a lot of eight-man boxes. But 3.3 yards per carry and just the effort, I saw it. But if you want to give me the 2017 version of Leonard Fournette, who was a baller, like a big-time baller at his rookie year at 268 carries, 1,000 yards, 3.9 yards per carry, and 9 touchdowns, this dude got a heavy workload on one of the worst offenses in the NFL, and I think we can all agree that they didn't make the playoffs because of Blake Bortles. Yes, the defense was great, but the defense was able to be great because of long drives sustained by Leonard Fournette just beating up defenses. Give me that type of running back every single day of the week on the Oakland Raiders. So, should the Raiders trade for Leonard Fournette? He is still technically a Jaguar, and he's not going to be a free agent in 2019 unless the Jaguars release him, which I would find surprising because he's got to have at least some sort of trade value. So, if they don't release him and he's out there and it's for the cheap, should the Raiders trade for Leonard Fournette? I want you to type Y for yes or type N for no. Going to give a shout out to today's sponsor, BetDSI, for hooking us up with the best promo code on the internet. It's 120% deposit bonus when you use promo code LIVE120. You see down there where it says play now, you're going to go to chatsports.com/bet. You want to bet on Raiders games? You want to bet on NFL playoffs? Do it all. Chatsports.com/bet. Remember to use that promo code LIVE120 for that 120% deposit bonus. You put down 50, you get 60 for free. Put down $100, get $120 for free. Be a big baller. Put down $500, get $600 for free. Ernie Lopez, I'm looking at you. Next guy coming up here, number 2 on my targets for the Oakland Raiders in 2019, it's Mark Ingram. And NOLA.com came out and said that there's a 30% chance that Ingram re-signs with the New Orleans Saints. And 30%, you know, if you watch the show, it's one Chucky head. So I like the idea of the Raiders potentially going out and getting Mark Ingram in 2019. And to be honest, out of all the running backs that I'm going to talk about, in terms of money, in terms of production, I think Mark Ingram could potentially be my favorite player. So it just doesn't make a lot of sense, I think, for the Saints to bring him back. And, I mean, they have Alvin Kamara. If I'm the Saints, Mark Ingram is a great running back. Maybe the worst Heisman winner ever, according to sources here at Chat Sports. But I still think Mark Ingram is a good running back, and Alvin Kamara is the future there. And I think they're going to really lean on him, and we saw them lean on Alvin Kamara even a little bit more down the stretch. And when you look at Ingram's, season in a nutshell, he's got 1 touchdown. That 1 touchdown came in his very first game back after being suspended for 4 games. 138 carries, 645 yards, 4.7 yards per carry. What I saw this season and what I saw last season is, sure, they're going to run the ball with Mark Ingram, but at the end of the day, when they need to score, when they need to really move the football, Alvin Kamara is on the field, and I think Mark Ingram still has a little bit of juice left where he can be a starting running back. And if we can get him at a market value right now at $4.4 million, maybe just grind him into the ground the next 2 years, because he's also a solid pass blocker, which Derek Carr definitely needs because, we got Tom Cable as our offensive line coach. I like this move, and I still think he's got a little bit left on the tires, right? So when you look at his career stats, 1,321 carries. It's a lot of carries. And 6,007 yards, it's a lot of yards. But 4.5 yards per carry for your entire career, that's good. 50 touchdowns, good. If I can get another 1 to 2 really solid years out of Mark Ingram, I would really like that pickup. And here's the other thing. Dude's not even 30 yet. So I still think he's got a little bit of wear and tear on those tires. So I talked about Leonard Fournette, and I talked about Mark Ingram. Who is the better running back right now? Is it Mark Ingram or is it Leonard Fournette? Now, Leonard Fournette plays on a bad team. Mark Ingram plays on a really good team. I would be always interested to see if we put like maybe Leonard Fournette on the Saints or Ingram on the Jags, how it would be different. But if you're watching this on YouTube, if you're watching this on Facebook, who's the better running back? Mark Ingram, Leonard Fournette. Type I for Ingram or type F for Fournette. If you want to know what I think, DM me on Twitter or Instagram at MitchellRenz365. My top running back for the Raiders in 2019 is probably the top free agent this offseason. It's Le'Veon Bell. And I understand Le'Veon Bell skipped 2018 and he wants a large contract. And he's going to end up getting a large contract. When you see that he wants that $16 to $17 million a year, and heck, he's looking to get about $40 million in guaranteed money. I wake up every morning crossing my fingers that I get a text from James Yoda that says, "Hey, Mitch, you want 40 guaranteed?" Just saying. James, if you're watching, fingers crossed. And I just think he's going to be the biggest free agent, and he's going to get paid. Now, I don't know if the Raiders necessarily should go out and pay him that kind of money, okay? Maybe we can get him a little bit cheaper, but when you're just looking at a pure talent standpoint, it's Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell is the best running back in the NFL to some people. You could also say Ezekiel Elliott, Todd Gurley. But when you just look at what he's done over the last 4 years, I mean, guys, come on. I mean, 2017, 406 touches, 1,946 yards, 11 touchdowns. And then you look at 2016. Right? Over 1,800 total yards. 692 yards in 2015. That was due to injury, but it's still super productive. Heck, when he came in 2014, there's no running back in that 4-year window who has more touches, more yards, and more touchdowns. Nobody. And that's why I think Le'Veon Bell is going to get a big contract now. Does he deserve it? From what I've seen a little bit, I'll be a little hesitant, but he wants that, highest paid running back in 2018 kind of money. And when you look at the highest paid running backs in 2018, yeah, I mean, Todd Gurley's sitting up there. You got David Johnson, Devonta Freeman, LaShawn McCoy, Saquon Barkley, but he wants to be in that David Johnson, Todd Gurley range, $13, $14 million per year. And, I watched James Conner this past year. He scored 12 rushing touchdowns, and I'm not saying that Le'Veon Bell's not a great running back, but maybe he was a little bit due to product of a system, and they have a great offensive line and a great offense, so they couldn't stack the box. But in terms of the Raiders, it's not necessarily the exact same thing, but that's the kind of money Le'Veon Bell wants to make, and I stated before, he wants somewhere around that $40 million guaranteed. Here's some other running backs in the NFL who are getting some serious guaranteed money. Zeke's up there with 24.5, Fournette 27.2. That's what he got. Barkley 31.2, David Johnson 31.9, and then Todd Gurley at $45 million guaranteed. Again, James, fingers crossed, my man. All right, I got a reaction poll for you. Should the Raiders target Le'Veon Bell? If you're watching on Facebook, give me a laughing face for no, or give me a heart for yes. If you're watching on YouTube, give me a type no or type yes. Should the Raiders target Le'Veon Bell? I think he would look great in silver and black if you're asking me, but, you know, what do I know? If you think I look good today on the show, go to www.comfortable.af. It's because of our sponsor, Mizzen & Main. These shirts are the best damn dress shirts you will ever buy, and they're made in America. Sweat wicking technology, super stretchable, unbelievably comfortable. Mizzen & Main making me look passable. Hooked me up with the date this weekend, so Mizzen & Main, shout out to you. Now I'm going to go back over my top 5 running backs here for the Oakland Raiders in 2019. Tevin Coleman sitting there at number 5. He wants to be the main man. He wants to get out of Atlanta. He wants to get out of the shadow of Devonta Freeman and be a main running back, right? And then number 4, as I need to peek over, is Jay Ajayi, who had an ACL injury. I think when he's healthy, he's good, but he's got his ups and he's got his downs. If I can get the ups of Jay Ajayi and maybe ride him out for another year or two, I would like that a lot. Leonard Fournette, not a free agent in 2019, but the Jaguars are looking to get rid of him, I think. And if they do, and they can get him for the cheap, Raiders are going to be sitting there waving, hey, look at us, Leonard. Mark Ingram. Out of all these names, this is one might be my favorite based on production, based on what he could bring right away, and based on money. Mark Ingram there, number 2, wants to get out of the shadow of Alvin Kamara. And then Le'Veon Bell. I think he's the top free agent running back this offseason, and even though he wants to get paid a lot, he's talented, and he could definitely help the Raiders right away. So those are my top 5. So who's going to be the starting running back for the Raiders in 2019? Could they re-sign maybe Jalen Richard or Doug Martin? Could it be Chris Warren? Or it could be one of the 5 names that I listed on the show. I want you guys to DM me at MitchellRens365 on Twitter. If you don't like my top 5, hit me up with yours. And if it's a good one, maybe I'll even retweet it. Who's going to be the top running back for the Raiders in 2019? Raider Nation, what's going on? Is this the #1 Raiders channel on YouTube? For Chucky Heads, believe it, baby. And if you haven't already, subscribe right here. I'm giving you Chucky Heads news, rumors, Raider Nation rumors. And look at this, I'm making your life easier. Check out my next video. Thanks for watching, and go Raiders.